So today we're taking a deep dive into a case. It's complex, it's tragic, and honestly, parts of it are just bizarre. We're talking about Alissa Turney.
Yeah, the Alissa Turney case. She vanished back in 2001, just 17 years old, from Phoenix, Arizona. And she's still missing.
Still missing. But this story, it's not just about the disappearance itself, right? We're really looking at the whole arc.
Exactly. How the investigation just stalled, completely stalled. And then what it took really, what her family, specifically her sister, had to do to push it forward again using, modern tools, digital platforms.
It's kind of a case study in how public advocacy can sometimes force the hand of the legal system when it seems like things have gone cold for good. We're tracing that whole path.
From that initial missing person report, which was handled, well, poorly, through some truly unbelievable twists involving the prime suspect.
Unbelievable is the word. And then seeing how family determination amplified online really did reshape everything, even if the legal end wasn't clean.
So let's set the scene. Alissa Marie Turney, born 1984. In 2001, she's 17. Typical teenager stuff, working part-time at Jack in the Box.
Finishing up his junior year at Paradise Valley High.
Yeah.
Had a boyfriend. A normal life seemingly unfolding.
Until May 17th, 2001. That's the day everything changed.
Okay, so before we get to that day, the family background feels pretty crucial here. It's complicated.
It really is. Her biological parents, Barbara and Stephen, they divorced when Alissa was tiny, like 3 years old.
And her mom, Barbara, she remarried Michael Turney.
Right. And Michael Turney then adopted Alissa and her older brother, John.
Okay, so he becomes the legal father.
Yeah. And Michael Turney already had 3 kids from a previous marriage. Then he and Barbara had a child together, Sarah, so it was a big blended family.
A lot of moving parts there.
Definitely. But then there's another layer of tragedy. When Alissa was just 9, her mother, Barbara, died of cancer.
Oh, wow. So young.
Yeah. And that left Michael Turney as the single parent responsible for all these kids. Though by 2001, when Alissa disappeared.
It was just Alissa and her younger half-sister, Sarah, living at home with him.
Right.
Sarah being his biological daughter with Barbara.
Exactly. So that's the specific household dynamic on the day she vanished. Michael Turney, the adoptive father, now single parent, living with 17-year-old Alissa and 12-year-old Sarah.
All right, so May 17th, 2001, last day of Alissa's junior year. What's the official story of that day? Or maybe Michael Turney's story?
Right, because it pretty much all comes from him initially. He claimed he dropped her off at school, Paradise Valley High, that morning. Seems normal enough.
Okay.
But then he says he picked her up around lunchtime.
Lunchtime on the last day of junior year, that feels a little weird, doesn't it? Why leave early?
It does raise a question immediately. Was there a reason? An appointment? Or something else? His account continues. He says they got home and they had an argument.
A fight between a teen and a parent. Happens all the time.
Sure. And according to Michael, after this argument, Alissa just stormed off, left the house in anger.
So that's the immediate explanation he provides. She was angry. She ran off.
And that explanation gets reinforced by the note. Michael and young Sarah, they say they found a note in Alissa's bedroom.
Supposedly written by Alissa.
Supposedly. Saying she was running away to California. So this narrative gets locked in pretty early. Rebellious teen argued with dad, ran away. Case closed, almost.
Okay, let's pause there. Running away to California. What about her stuff?
Exactly. That's where the running away story starts to fray, immediately. She left behind really crucial personal items. The big one, her cell phone.
In 2001, a 17-year-old leaves her cell phone behind when running away. That feels highly unlikely. That's your connection to everything.
Right. It seriously undermines the idea of a planned, voluntary departure. And it wasn't just the phone. She had plans for that night.
Oh, yeah.
She was supposed to go to a party. Friends were expecting her. If you're planning to run away, you usually don't make plans for that same evening.
So, leaving the phone, ditching party plans, it points more towards something sudden, unplanned, or something preventing her from going. Not a carefully planned escape to California.
These should have been huge red flags right from the start for investigators. Lack of preparation, missed commitments.
And if that wasn't enough to cast doubt, Michael Turney adds another detail about a week later, May 24th.
Yeah, he tells the police he received a phone call.
From California.
Supposedly, from a California number. He claimed it was Alissa, that she just swore at him and then hung up.
Wow. That's incredibly convenient for his narrative, isn't it? A week after she supposedly runs to California, he gets a call from California confirming she's alive but angry.
It feels almost too neat. Like, it's designed to shut down any further questions. If she was truly out there, why just one angry call and then silence forever? It doesn't track.
No, it served mainly to reinforce the idea that she wasn't missing, just gone. And that seems to have worked, initially.
And that's the real tragedy of the early days. Michael Turney did file a report on May 17th, the day she vanished. But the police, they didn't see foul play.
They basically took his story argument, ran off, note at face value.
Pretty much. And because they didn't suspect anything criminal, there was no formal, urgent investigation in those critical first hours and days.
We always hear about the first 48 hours in these cases, how crucial they are.
Absolutely crucial. Witness memories fade, potential evidence degrades or disappears. Not launching a full investigation right away was a major failure here.
So the case just sits there, goes cold.
For years, it went completely cold, until 2006, when this really bizarre distraction pops up.
Ah, this is the Thomas Heimer part.
Yeah. Thomas Albert Heimer, he was already in prison, convicted for an unrelated murder back in 2003, a self-proclaimed serial killer.
Okay. And he claimed he killed Alissa.
He told a prison guard exactly that, claimed he'd killed Alissa Turney, which, you can imagine, suddenly puts the case back on the radar for Phoenix PD.
They'd have to check that out, obviously.
Oh, definitely. They investigated his claims seriously, but it fell apart pretty quickly.
How so?
They determined Heimer couldn't have had any contact with Alissa. Wrong place, wrong time, no connection whatsoever.
Did he admit he was wrong?
Eventually, yeah. He basically backtracked and said he might have confused her with someone else he had harmed.
So a total dead end. But it probably wasted a lot of time and resources.
Exactly. It's a common issue in cold cases, false confessions diverting focus from potentially real leads.
Okay, so Heimer was a dead end. When did things actually start moving forward again on the actual case?
The real turning point was 2008. 7 years after Alissa disappeared, the case was officially reopened.
What prompted that? Was it just time? Or did something new come up?
It seems like it was a combination of factors, maybe some lingering internal doubts within the police department, possibly renewed scrutiny, maybe even some early advocacy we don't know about. But the key thing is, the focus shifted.
Shifted from looking for a missing girl?
To looking directly at her stepfather, Michael Turney, as the prime suspect.
And this is where things escalate dramatically.
Right.
Leading up to a raid in December 2008.
Right before that raid, Michael Turney himself came forward with this wild story, just completely outlandish.
This is the IBEW thing.
Yes. He claimed Alissa hadn't run away, hadn't been killed by him, but was murdered by two assassins. Sent, he claimed, by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the IBEW union.
Okay. Why?
Yeah.
What was the supposed motive?
He never really provided a coherent one, which is part of why it sounded so paranoid. And he even specified where she was supposedly buried, Desert Center, California.
California again. Echoes of the supposed phone call years earlier, but IBEW assassins.
It's deeply bizarre. It screams either profound delusion or a very, very elaborate attempt to create a confusing counter-narrative.
And while he's telling this story, the police are moving in.
Simultaneously. It was clearly a coordinated effort. As he's spinning this tale, detectives are doing two things. One, they formally tell Alissa's half-sister, Sarah, that her father, Michael, is their main suspect.
Can you imagine being Sarah, hearing that officially?
Devastating. And at the same time, a massive police operation executes a search warrant on the Turney home, the December 2008 raid.
And what they found in that raid, it's horrifying. It changes the entire picture of Michael Turney.
It really does. Forget just suspicious father. The evidence paints him as an imminent danger. They found explosives.
How many?
More than 24 improvised explosive devices, IEDs, homemade bombs.
24 homemade bombs in the house where he lived.
At least. Plus 19 firearms and 2 homemade illegal silencers.
This is an arsenal.
It is. And maybe the most chilling part, in terms of planning something specific, they found a van parked there, filled with gasoline canisters.
Filled with gasoline, like ready for something.
That's exactly how it looked. Not just storing gas. This was preparation. Mobilization for some kind of incendiary attack.
So bombs, guns, silencers, a van full of gas. What was he planning? Did he find anything else?
They did. The final crucial piece, a manifesto, written by Michael Turney.
And what did it say?
It laid out in detail his plans for a violent attack, a rampage, and the target.
Let me guess. The IBEW.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers building in Phoenix, the very group he had just accused of sending assassins to kill his stepdaughter.
Wow. So the assassin story wasn't just random paranoia. It was tied directly to his own planned violence against them. It's like a twisted projection.
Absolutely. The raid revealed this deep well of paranoia, obsessive hatred, and concrete planning for mass violence. And suddenly, Alissa's disappearance has this incredibly dark, violent context surrounding the main suspect.
So he's arrested right then and there.
Yes, but initially, not for anything to do with Alissa, he was arrested and prosecuted federally for the cache of weapons and explosives. That was undeniable evidence of serious crimes.
And he was convicted on those charges.
He was. Sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, served most of it, getting released in August 2017.
So for almost a decade, the prime suspect in Alissa's disappearance is off the streets. But because of bombs and guns, not because of Alissa.
Exactly. The investigation into her actual vanishing remained open, unresolved. But his incarceration created this window, a period where he couldn't interfere, and others could start pushing for answers about Alissa.
Right, so Turney's in prison from late 2008 until 2017. This seems like the period where the focus starts to shift towards public awareness and eventually advocacy.
It absolutely is. The system had kind of done its part on the weapons, but stalled on Alissa, so the momentum had to come from elsewhere.
And traditional media did play a role in keeping the story alive, didn't it?
It did. The news program 2020 did a big feature in October 2014 called What Happened to Alissa. Michael Turney was still locked up then.
Did you talk to them?
Yeah, he was interviewed from prison, and predictably, he maintained his innocence regarding Alissa.
And they came back to it again later.
They did. 2020 revisited the case in September 2023, since you've been gone. And Dateline NBC also covered it in December 2023, the day Alissa disappeared. So the case stayed in the national consciousness, at least periodically.
Keeping those disturbing details, the disappearance, the bombs out there.
Exactly. But the real catalyst for change, the thing that really forced the issue, came from new media. Podcasting specifically, and then amplified massively online.
There was an early podcast, right? Before Sarah's.
Yeah, while Turney was still serving his sentence, a Phoenix journalist, Ottavia Zapala, launched Missing Alissa. It ran from mid-2017 to early 2019.
What was the focus there?
It did a good job exploring the known facts, interviewing some of Alissa's friends and family, really laying out the background and the strangeness of the situation for a new audience. It helped build a foundation.
But then came the big one. Sarah Turney's podcast.
Voices for Justice. Started in June 2019. Sarah, remember, was Alissa's half-sister. She was just 12 when Alissa vanished. She decided she wasn't going to wait anymore. She was going to find answers herself.
This wasn't just recounting the story, though. She was doing actual investigative work, wasn't she?
Deep investigative work. And the key was her source material. She had obtained, through public records requests, this enormous volume of case files from the Phoenix Police Department.
How much are we talking?
Over 3,000 pages. Think about that. Interview transcripts, police notes, evidence logs, reports going all the way back to 2001.
Wow. That's incredible access. Most people covering these cases don't get that level of primary documentation.
Exactly. And she didn't just have it, she used it. She went through those 3,000 pages meticulously.
What was she looking for? Or finding?
Discrepancies, contradictions in Michael Turney's statements over the years, leads the police maybe didn't follow up on aggressively enough back in 2001. She highlighted the weaknesses in the initial investigation using the police's own documents.
So she's essentially crowdsourcing the analysis of the police file through her podcast.
In a way, yeah. She was laying out the evidence piece by piece, episode by episode, showing the listeners the basis for suspicion, straight from the files. It was incredibly compelling and transparent.
And then she took it beyond the podcast format, April 2020.
Yeah, that was the game changer. She started using a very popular video sharing platform, the one known for short, viral videos.
Right. Taking these complex details from the police files and distilling them into short, shareable video clips.
Precisely. Highlighting specific things. The note, the phone, the timeline inconsistencies, the IEDs, her father's behavior. Each video focused on a key piece of the puzzle.
And that strategy, it worked.
It exploded. The videos started getting millions of views very quickly. It took the case from a niche podcast audience to a massive global audience almost overnight.
That kind of visibility must have generated immense pressure.
Immense is the right word. Suddenly you had millions of people asking, what is going on with the Alissa Turney case? Why hasn't more been done?
The pressure on the Phoenix PD and the Maricopa County Attorney's Office became intense and very public.
It's a powerful example of how citizen advocacy, using the right platform and documented facts, can genuinely move the needle. Absolutely. It demonstrated that you could take publicly available information, package it effectively for these new media platforms, and create a groundswell that authorities simply couldn't ignore anymore.
What's also interesting is what Sarah did next with her podcast. After all this success focusing on Alissa.
Right. She made a very deliberate, strategic decision. After putting out over 30 episodes just on Alissa's case, she transitioned the Voices for Justice podcast in January 2021.
Transitioned how?
She started covering other missing persons cases, other unsolved homicides. She specifically stated she was doing this to avoid potentially compromising the now very active investigation into Alissa's disappearance.
That shows incredible discipline. To step back at the peak of attention for her sister's case.
It does. She recognized her role might need to shift from public investigator to potential witness in a criminal trial. She didn't want anything she said publicly to jeopardize the legal process she had fought so hard to restart. Professional and incredibly focused on the ultimate goal: justice for Alissa.
So that massive public pressure campaign, fueled by Sarah's work with the case files and the video platform, it clearly had an impact on the authorities.
Undeniably. In August 2020, right around the peak of all that online attention and outcry,
Michael Turney was arrested.
Arrested in Mesa, Arizona. And this time, it wasn't about the bombs and guns from 2008. He'd served his time for that. This was different.
This was for Alissa.
Yes, a Maricopa County grand jury indicted him. He was formally charged with second-degree murder in the death of Alissa Turney.
Finally, after almost 20 years, a direct charge related to her disappearance. That must have felt like a huge victory for Sarah and everyone who followed the case.
Oh, absolutely. A major culmination of years of relentless effort. Getting the charge filed was a monumental step.
But as we know, getting a charge filed and getting a conviction are two very different things, especially in a case like this.
Especially in a nobody case. The legal hurdles are incredibly high when you don't have the victim's remains.
What are the main challenges there, legally speaking?
The prosecution has to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, not only that the person is dead, which is harder without a body, but also that their death was a homicide, and that the defendant specifically caused that death. It's called proving the corpus delicti, the body of the crime.
So even with all the circumstantial evidence against Michael Turney, the inconsistencies, the lies, the bizarre IBEW story, the terrifying arsenal they found.
Right. All of that paints a picture of him being deceitful, paranoid, capable of violence, having a motive perhaps related to control. But it doesn't directly prove how Alissa died or that he definitively killed her on May 17, 2001.
There's still that evidentiary gap regarding the actual act.
Exactly. The 2008 raid proved he was dangerous and planning something violent, but connecting that specific capability back to Alissa's death 7 years earlier without physical evidence. That's the challenge.
And that challenge played out over the next few years leading up to the trial.
Well, leading up towards the trial, the prosecution worked on building its case, the defense prepared its arguments, but it all came to a head in July 2023.
And what was the outcome?
The outcome was abrupt. All charges against Michael Turney were dismissed by the judge.
Dismissed, before even going to a full jury trial.
Yes. Essentially, the judge ruled that the state's evidence, while suspicious, wasn't strong enough to meet the legal standard required to proceed to trial and potentially secure a conviction for second-degree murder, particularly given the lack of direct evidence like a body or a confession detailing the crime.
Wow. After everything. After the advocacy, the arrest, the indictment, dismissed. That must have been absolutely gut-wrenching for Sarah Turney.
You can only imagine. It highlights this difficult intersection between strong suspicion, even a moral certainty for some, and the very high bar of legal proof needed in a criminal trial. The system, based on the evidence presented, couldn't bridge that gap.
So the legal process essentially hit a wall.
It did. Acknowledging, perhaps, that while Michael Turney remains the only credible suspect and his actions were deeply disturbing, the specific evidence needed to prove murder beyond a reasonable doubt just wasn't there, according to the court.
Which leaves us where we started, in a way, with the fundamental painful fact.
Alissa Turney's body has never been found. Officially, she remains a missing person. The case is, in legal terms, unresolved, back in limbo.
So looking back at this whole deep dive, the Alissa Turney case is just... It's such a strange and frustrating journey. You start with this dismissal by police, letting the crucial early days slip away based on a flimsy story.
Then you have the years of silence, followed by the absolute shock of the 2008 raid, the bombs, the manifesto revealing this incredibly dark, violent mindset in the stepfather. It's like something out of a movie.
Right, and then the emergence of Sarah Turney. taking those 3,000 pages of police files, turning them into this powerful advocacy campaign online, literally forcing the authorities to act after nearly 2 decades.
It's an incredible story of sisterly love and determination. Her work stands as this really stark example of what determined citizen investigation can achieve when the official channels seem blocked or stalled.
It really shows you the power of information when it's organized, documented, and amplified effectively, especially using today's digital tools. She moved mountains.
She absolutely did. She took a cold case, made it a national conversation, and secured a murder indictment against the prime suspect. That is a monumental achievement in itself, regardless of the final legal ruling.
And that achievement, that public identification and pressure, it has its own kind of accountability, doesn't it? Even without a conviction.
It certainly does. Michael Turney might not have been convicted in court, but through Sarah's work, the public is overwhelmingly aware of the circumstances, the evidence found, the reasons for suspicion. That narrative is firmly established.
But it still leaves us with this difficult question at the end. The advocacy work, it forced the system to act. But the system itself, with its high burden of proof, ultimately had to stop.
And that's the final thought, really. When you have such disturbing circumstantial evidence of to turning them bombs bachams, the manifesto pointing to extreme violence and paranoia combined with the enduring mystery of nobody, what does accountability even look like?
Yeah. The legal system reached its limit based on the evidence available. Advocacy pushed it as far as it could go.
So what happens next? What happens when that gap between strong suspicion and legal proof remains, despite everyone's best efforts? It forces you to think about the nature of justice itself, especially in these long, cold cases where the absolute truth might remain just out of reach of the courtroom.